What's up guys, it's Royal Scales and welcome back to my channel. So this video, as you can tell by the title, is the detailed walkthrough of how I did the jumpsuit for my Among Us cosplay. Again, this is one of those side videos. If you want to see the full general walkthrough where I just kind of explain all the different pieces and what they're made out of, then I will leave the link to that in the description below as soon as I make it. At this point, I have not yet even recorded that video, so that's a thing. But as soon as I do, it will be in the description, and you can click on that and go watch that video. That video will also have all the links to all the other detailed side videos, I guess, for the rest of the costume pieces. Before I get started with this video, I do want to mention one thing. I have been not streaming the past like 2 weeks, I think, because my plan was to go on an little impromptu hiatus because I ordered a PC because my current laptop just is not wanting to stream the games that it used to, including Among Us, which is a really small game. So the fact that it doesn't even want to record or stream rather Among Us is kind of a bummer. So I did go ahead and order a full PC, and it was supposed to ship on the 5th, which as of right now would be tomorrow, and I got an email yesterday saying that it potentially won't ship for another 2 weeks. So that's not quite ideal when it comes to streaming. I am gonna try to stream games like Stardew Valley and maybe give Among Us another try. It's just kind of hard to get groups together, and I don't want to stream only Among Us for another 2 weeks. So my other option would be to stream building actual cosplays. The next cosplay I'm working on is Rouge from Sonic Heroes, and I am really excited about that costume. I do have a few videos planned from that costume besides just the actual construction of the cosplay. So my thought on that was I could stream the building of that costume. My bracelets are being weird. Anyway, my thought on that was that I could stream the construction of that costume so that I'm at least streaming something. So let me know if that'd be something that you guys are interested in. Just leave a comment down below and tell me your thoughts on that. I could also do other artsy type of videos, such as like painting videos. I've got a few canvases that I can paint as well that I will have to plan something to paint, but I'm sure I can find something. My eyebrows are weird. Sisters, not twins. Right now they're cousins, but it's fine. So yeah, so if you'd be interested in watching cosplay type streams, I may go ahead and do that just to kind of see how it works out and how people take to it and all that kind of stuff. Again, I am going to also try to stream like Stardew Valley and The Sims or something. I don't know. I'm just going to find some small games that run really well on my computer and that I can also stream. But they have to run well on my computer, or otherwise they're not going to stream well at all. So all that being said, I don't want to take up too much more time of this video because it's already going to be a long one. So yeah, let's get on with the costume. I'm so proud of this transition. Also, I'm going to go ahead and apologize for the yellow hue. The lighting in my room is really strange, so that's a thing. But also, I am finally using a pattern for the first time in my life. The actual tracing and cutting out of the pattern pieces is a very tedious process, so that's a thing, but also it helped out so much, and I definitely would not have been able to do this without a pattern, so 12 out of 10 would recommend. As you can see, I am using a Sharpie instead of my white ink pen. This is partially because I couldn't find it at the time, and also partially because I was tracing it on my bed. However, I did use this guide and follow the inside of the markings just to give myself a little bit more leeway with it. So if that's something you do, then, you know, that's a thing. I don't recommend doing it this way because Sharpie is really hard to get out of fabric, and the fabric I used is not very thick, so you can definitely see through to the other side. And yeah, I would just recommend using a pencil or a pen on a hard surface so that you can actually get the markings pretty accurate. Another thing I did not do was trace the patterns together, so like the arm pieces and the leg pieces, which you'll see later, are not connected, but it's not that hard to fix that situation later. So like I said just a second ago, one of the things that I did not account for was the fact that some parts of the pattern are disconnected for the sake of space on the paper. So you are meant to actually pin those together and trace them as one piece. However, I did not do that because I am a fool and am not very accustomed to using patterns. So what I did instead was I cut them in separate pieces and then realized my mistake, but fixed that by just sewing the pieces together, and honestly I like the way it looks with the separate seams at essentially like mid-calf or mid-shin, whatever, and then also on the forearms of the jumpsuit. I really like how it looks, so I'm okay with this mistake. However, if that's not something that you want to deal with, then you can just skip this step by doing it the right way and pin the pattern together and trace it all as one piece. As per the directions, you will see me stitch this twice. I'm going in the first time with a straight stitch, and then I'm going in the second time with a zigzag stitch to reinforce the stitches. I'm a little bit whitewashed now because it is now a different time of day. However, I did not notice until editing this video that I somehow forgot to hit record when I sewed on the pockets of the pants, so I just figured I would just record a little bit and show you essentially how I did it. The fact that I forgot to record actually allows me to point something else out. So the material that I use is like a polyester nylon kind of fabric. It's really soft, but it's also very prone to fraying, if you can see all that. So that's why it is super important to double stitch this, because it will fall apart otherwise. On the pocket, you can see that I did not use a zigzag stitch because it was stitched like 3 or 4 times. So it didn't really need it, I didn't think, and as of right now, it's holding up pretty well. So that's a thing. Basically, just make this little pouch thing, and then you're going to cut a slit into, I apologize for that. And then you're going to cut a slit into the pants and just sew the pocket onto it. You also want to make this little band. It's called a pocket band, apparently. And you're going to sew that onto it before you sew the pouch on. So cut the slit, sew on the pocket band, and then sew the pouch on. And then you're going to sew the pocket band down on the top and bottom of the pants, if that makes any sort of sense. There you go. That's the pocket. And you can also tell that I accidentally sewed one of them inside out. So this one, when it pops out, just looks like that. The other one, however, if you were to pop it out, you can see all the stitching. So since it's a pocket, it doesn't really matter, but you know, that might be something to pay attention to. Just a little forewarning. After you sew the pockets on, you're going to want to sew the front piece and the back piece together. Bear in mind, these are front pockets, so that's a thing. Make sure you do sew those onto the front piece of the pant leg, not the back. You can add back pockets if you want to. That is completely up to you. I did also number the pieces so that it would be easier for me personally to follow the directions. Not necessary, but it is something that helped me, so I thought I would throw that out there. There was no easy way to show what I was doing on camera at the time that I could think of, probably because I was very sleep deprived. However, now I can show you no problem. So to sew the pant legs together, you're actually going to put the outside of the pant legs together and stick one inside of the other, and then just sew along the edge, and it's going to create this U shape, and that's the crotchular area. One thing that it does say to do that I did not do was to make certain markings, and because of the different measurements that I took, such as getting a 20-inch, 22-inch, something like that, I think it was a 20-inch zipper as opposed to a 22 to 24, which is recommended For this pattern, I did go with a, hi child, I did go with a 20-inch zipper instead. So I ended up having to make different measurements. So I just pretty much sewed until I hit a certain point. I sewed until I hit a certain point, and then whenever I went back to put the zipper on, I added the rest of the stitching to it, if that makes any sense at all. So originally I had an idea of potentially doing a 3/4 length sleeve instead of the full long sleeve. So while I was deciding on how I wanted to do it, I went ahead and moved to the little shoulder pad things. It does come with the pattern in the set to make these out of fabric. However, I wanted it to be a little bit more spacey and stick out further instead of just kind of being little shoulder flaps. So I went ahead and made these out of craft foam. By doing this, I was also able to pull the silver from the helmet and add it into the jumpsuit as well to kind of tie it together a little bit. If you saw my video for how I made the bodysuit, you'll remember that I also used silver for the bodysuit, so it just kind of ties it all together pretty nicely. To ensure that I got 2 equal pieces, instead of tracing the pattern twice, I just traced it once and then cut the first piece out and then traced the second piece. I am using my white ink pen, which, surprise, surprise, was in my pen cup on my craft table, where it should be anyway. Once I was happy with the shape of the shoulder flap pieces, things, I covered them with a generous layer of Mod Podge. Since they're made of foam, if you don't get a good enough seal on it, you will be painting layer after layer after layer because the foam will absorb your paint. So make sure you get a generous layer on both sides as well as the edges, because you don't want any of the black to show, or maybe you do want the black to show. I don't know, it's up to you. However, for mine, I didn't want the black showing. So I put a nice layer of sealant on both sides and on the edges, and then went in with, I believe, 2 to 3 coats of silver paint. And once I was pleased with the amount of coverage I got with the paint, I went back and added another layer of sealant on top of it just to give it the nice shiny finish. So I did goof with the camera angle a little bit here, so I apologize for that, but also you can see what you need to see, so it buffs out. Once I finished painting and sealing everything and everything was nice and dry, I lined up the round edge of the shoulder flap with the round edge of the sleeve and then sewed the two together. You do want to make sure that the right side is the side that you sew the shoulder flap to, so whatever side of the fabric is going to be facing the outside is the side that you want to sew the fabric flap to, which should be obvious, but I also goofed on that and sewed it to the wrong side. So, you know, just thought I'd mention it. The next step is to create the top part of the jumpsuit. To do this, you're going to sew the two back pieces together and then sew the shoulders together where the front pieces meet the back pieces. However, you do not want to sew the sides together just yet, because whenever you sew the sleeves closed is when you're going to sew the sides together to get an accurate stitch. Also, be sure to not sew the front closed, because you do still have to add the zipper, and if you sew the front closed, then you're kind of in a bad way. This part was the most confusing to me just because of how it's worded in the instructions, but basically what you're going to do is line up the rounded edge of the sleeve to the rounded edge on the top where the shoulder is, and then connect the two shorter pieces and essentially make the top part of the sleeve. This is going to give the curved shape to the shoulder flaps. I realize that sounds really confusing when you're not looking at the pattern, so I will put a link to the pattern that I used in the description below so that you can get the same one if you want to. Basically, I'm just creating the rounded piece of the sleeve and then the part that's going to attach on the front and back to create a little bit more movement and more flexibility to the actual sleeve itself. After all was said and done, I did decide to go with a longer sleeve as opposed to the 3/4 length. So I just took that piece of fabric that I had cut out to originally be attached to the sleeves, but again, I'm a fool and did not cut it out that way. And I sewed it to the rest of the sleeve to give it the extra length that it needed to be a long sleeve. To make the sleeve cuff, just fold up the edge inside of the sleeve so that you can get a nice little tube type of thing, I guess is technically what it is, and then sew that down to create the actual cuff. This is going to be used later to add in the styrofoam. I almost said styrofoam. We're not adding styrofoam, we're adding elastic. So whenever you do sew this up, you're going to want to leave about an inch whenever you close up the actual sleeve and the side so that you can get these, I almost said styrofoam again. It's not styrofoam, it's elastic. Leave an inch so that you can put the elastic into the sleeve cuff. I completely mistimed that recording, so what you missed during that voice recording is that I added an invisible waistband elastic, which basically just means I made a tube inside of the jumpsuit that's not connected to the outside, if that makes any sense at all. So basically you get the effect of the elastic, but you can't actually see where the elastic is on the outside. And then you're just going to connect the top and the bottom together by essentially turning it with the right sides facing each other, put the top inside the pants, and then sew them together. Not gonna lie, inserting the elastic is kind of a pain in the butt, but the best way to do it is to take a safety pin to the end of the elastic so that you have some sort of a solid object in there so that you can just kind of push it through the tube that you've created with your fabric and just essentially scrunch it up and then pull it out so that you can get the elastic all the way through. Once you've gotten one end to the end of the tube, go ahead and sew that down so that you don't pull it too far through and have to start over again, because again, it's a pain in the butt and I wouldn't want to do it more times than necessary. To get my measurements, I pretty much just wrapped the elastic around my ankle, my wrist, and my waist, and then took a centimeter off of what that measurement was. So whatever your measurement is, just wrap the elastic where you're intending for it to go in the costume, and then take a centimeter off of what you've measured out. The only difference in application between the wrists and ankle pieces and the waist piece is that on the waist piece, you don't want to sew it together because you do want to be able to unzip it to get in and out of the jumpsuit. However, in the wrist pieces and the ankle pieces, you are going to sew those together before closing up the actual tube. Next is my arch nemesis, the zipper. So, like I said earlier, I did leave a little bit of extra space just so I could know exactly how much I needed to stitch to accommodate for the lack of 2 extra inches on the zipper. Once I figured that out, I stitched a little square rectangle thing that's about an inch tall and maybe a centimeter wide that goes on either side of what will be the zipper, and then cut a little triangular piece that's going to be the bottom connector piece for the zipper. One thing that I truly hate with a passion is using pins. So as you can see here, I am using craft clips to attach the zipper to the jumpsuit before sewing it on to make sure that I have it at the right length and the right height and it's all lined up and everything, and these things are incredible and 12 out of 10 would recommend. When you attach the zipper, you want to make sure that the zipper is laying face down on the right side of the fabric, so the fabric that's going to be on the outside of the jumpsuit, and then clip it down, flip it over, and then do the same thing where you get it as best as you can with the face down, and then clip it again so that you get that nice little fold on the zipper. And then to attach it, I'm using a zipper foot, which is an attachment that actually came with my machine, but you can get them at any craft store and they should fit on most, if not all, machines. When sewing on the zipper, make sure that the zipper is unzipped and that you're keeping as close to the center of the black material on the zipper. Well, on my zipper it's black, on other zippers it may be different colors, but whatever color your material is, make sure that you're sewing as close to the center as you can. While sewing, you're going to want to sew starting at the top of one side, sew all the way down, and then cross over to the other side, and then sew up to the top of the other side, so it's going to be one continuous stitch. Next, you're going to add the front facing. To do this, you're essentially just folding over the edges of the material that was cut out. This is going to pretty much create an extra barrier of fabric to finish off the edges of the neckline and also the edges on where the zipper goes. To attach this, you're essentially just lining up the lines, the edges, that's the one, and matching up the edges of the front of the jumpsuit as well as the neckline of the jumpsuit, and then you're just going to attach that the same place that you attached the zipper. For the collar, you can use the same material that you used for the jumpsuit. There is a pattern piece for that. However, I just took essentially the same shape and used a strip of silver ribbon just to add a little bit more silver to the jumpsuit. I essentially freehanded this because I already knew what shape I wanted the collar to be. I made sure to measure it out to make sure that it would all line up nicely, and then I just sewed the shape into the ribbon and then cut off the excess and then turned it right side out. So if you're using a satin ribbon like I did, make sure that you sew it with the satin folded over in half and touching each other. Or if you want to use two pieces of ribbon, make sure, same thing, that the satin is touching each other so that when you flip it right side out to attach it, the satin is what's on the outside. To attach it, you're going to lay the open end lined up with the neckline and make sure you fold it outwards so that it lands towards the outside of the jumpsuit, and then just sew around the neck collar piece thing and it should line up nicely. I made sure that mine came as close to touching both ends of the zipper as possible, or both the outside edges, I guess makes more sense. And you could stop here if you wanted to. The jumpsuit is now finished. However, I bought some patches off of Amazon that I wanted to add to my jumpsuit. And these are basically just iron-on patches that I pressed down with an iron to try and get them to stick as best as I could before flipping it inside out and ironing it to make sure it was very nicely melted on and would not fall off. So there you have it. That is how I made the jumpsuit for the Among Us cosplay. I apologize for this being a little bit longer of a video. There was a lot of detail that needed to be covered though. So once it's all complete, this is essentially how it looks. And that's about as much as I can get in because I'm small. The one thing that I did realize I did not go over in this video was the little zipper flap, and that's essentially just a flap of fabric that's folded over on itself and sewed together and then sewn onto the actual bodysuit, jumpsuit, whatever this is, itself. And then up at the top I did glue on some Velcro so that it stays flopped over. One thing about this though is you might want to put some at the bottom of the jumpsuit zipper cover thing just so that it doesn't flop over one way and expose your zipper, because then you can see all the nice pretty stitching that's not so great looking. So if you want to, you can add a little bit more Velcro to the bottom. However, I do have a belt that's going to be going around this, so it's not that big of a deal to me. If you'd like to tune in for a little bit more of a show and tell type of video where I will put on the costume, show how it looks, all that kind of stuff, and then go detail by detail essentially to show you all the little minuscule details and what they're made out of, how I did those, all that kind of sort of thing. I will be leaving the link to that video in the description as soon as it is recorded and edited, because again, at this point, I have not even made it yet. In that video's description, there will also be the links to all the other videos that are the more detailed walkthroughs of how I made these certain pieces. I do have one more video coming out after this, and then the general overview, and that will complete the Among Us costume series thing. If you want to check this video's description, again, that link will be there eventually. What will be there as soon as this video goes up, however, is the links to my Instagram, my Twitter, and my Twitch. On my Twitch, I will be streaming the construction of cosplays. I haven't decided what my cosplay will be after my Rouge cosplay, so I only have one in advance. But I will be streaming that construction. Again, I will be streaming that on Twitch, and that link is in the description. Be sure to stop by and enjoy my struggles and strife and probably some colorful language, because that happens a lot whenever I goof on costumes. But that's all I have for you for this video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you want to share this video, feel free to. I'm not opposed. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
You know every day's a grind.